The voice of San Joaquin and the voice of Stockton presents Live with Kimberly, with your host, Kimberly Warmsley.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm super duper duper happy to present our next guest. But before I do that, let me introduce myself to the community. My name is Kimberly Warmsley, and welcome to the Live with Kimberly show. Today it's going to be really, really exciting. We are here to talk about the truths to our community. We are here to talk about the issues. We are here to talk about the concerns in a very transparent means and way. Today we are going to be talking about very powerful people in the community, and I hope that you are all ready to listen. So with that being said, let's get started. To the right of me, I have the lovely Jasmine Ivy, who is an entrepreneur in the community.
Hello.
Welcome, Jasmine. And last but not least, a person who needs no introduction. We have Mr. Valentino Silva, who's a community organizer. And the topic of today's conversation is overcoming adversity and environmental trauma. So before we get into the topic, let's talk about what is trauma, because sometimes people, it's such a overrated term that I think that we need to just be very concrete about what it is for our listeners in order to really follow through and have a really concrete conversation. So, the definition of trauma is any event or situation in your life that has caused you some form of emotional distress or emotional instability. And what I mean by that is many different things. So, it could be anywhere from sleep insomnia to being very high strung, hypervigilant, mood instability, dysregulation of life. And this trauma affects your ability to function in your full entirety throughout the day. So with today's conversation, we're going to talk about environmental trauma. And environmental trauma is basically things within your direct environment that causes you distress. And that can be anywhere between poverty, it could be crime, displacement, it could be racial trauma, anything that is affecting you as it relates to trauma. All of us have dealt with it. I think that everyone's just different in the way that they are resilient to handling that trauma. And so with that being said, it's a very important conversation to have within this community, especially for the city of Stockton, where the median income at this point for families can be anywhere between 26 to 30,000. So a lot of people do struggle with income disparities and poverty, and are living below the median income throughout our county. And so with that being said, today we're going to just talk about resiliency and what does that mean. And of course, I'm not here to say that just because you grow up in a disenfranchised or disinvested community that you are traumatized. But I will say that evidence has shown that these type of injustices that people have faced in their community can cause some dysregulation in mood and the way that we thrive as community. And so with that being said, the purpose of this Live with Kimberly show today is to talk about adversity, in which I think that Jasmine and Valentino, when I think about adversity, because I know you guys personally on a personal level, yeah. And I know your struggles and what you have faced in your life. And so just wanting to bring it back to you all to talk about what does diversity means to you, and just, kind of give some feedback. Let's talk about it. I thought we were ready to get started.
Let's get this.
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and start.
You can start first.
All right, awesome. So, I grew up in Conway back in 06, 07. So, on Dallas Avenue was kind of popping. There were many, drug dealers and stuff of that activity. But overcoming that kind of shows the person that you will become later on in the future. In those types of communities, we are very diverse. And with that, we have to have consideration for one another. And I think that compassion is a component that is missing. And that's where a lot of these issues stem from.
Right. Absolutely. And I think, I've always had a lot of conversations with teachers in particular, and community members about how sometimes we label children and families as like being problem families or problem children. However, we need to start looking deeper, digging deeper,
Exactly.
to find out why, kids are acting out and why mom is unavailable, or dad is absent. We didn't even talk about or include in the environmental trauma women and men who are raising kids single-handedly.
Exactly.
That is traumatic to a child. And so, we are so quick to label people without digging deeper.
Yes.
I remember working in South Stockton, and I had a kid that I was working with, and the kid was like having all these issues
Wow.
in that class. And, I'm like, okay, so what, besides labeling this child defiant, what else have you done to identify the issue?
Exactly. So just to chime in for a little bit. So like when a kid goes to school and, they have high truancy, classroom issues, kids bursting out, what is the issue? You
Dig
can't.
deeper.
Yeah,
So
because
you're just saying this child is just bad, labeling is bad. You got to get to the core of it. Why
Exactly.
is this child acting the way they
Absolutely.
are acting? What's going on at home, or what's even going on at school for this child to be acting out like this?
Exactly.
So instead of just jumping the gun and say, "Hey, we're gonna label this child as this," let's do a little bit
and
of
punishing the child, which makes it worse because now the child feels, hey, so I have nobody to speak to. I'm crying for help.
I have no safe space to
Exactly.
process how I'm feeling.
Kind of feel like I have nobody to talk to.
Right. And, I think that one of the things that as a community that we miss out on, that I wish that we would do a better job at, is assessing whether or not that child has had a good meal at night.
Yes.
Because sometimes that inattentiveness and inability to focus could be that the child merely didn't have a good meal at night. Or
Yep.
or a set hour to go to bed to get that proper rest.
Exactly.
And so, right. So, Jasmine, I just want you to kind of chime in a little bit. We ain't forgot about you. Tell us a little bit about how you're feeling when we're talking about environmental trauma and
Growing up, we kind of like were in several different neighborhoods. But as I got older, I was like really able to understand. So I think my biggest challenge for me when I started growing up was more like, it was kind of like junior high, but I had like a few family members that kind of show us a little different. But it was really in like my 8th grade summer to like the end of my high school years. That was like the toughest neighborhood. My mom moved us on the east side of Stockton.
wow.
So when we moved on the east side of Stockton, it's like, okay, now this is my image. I'm learning myself. I'm learning who I am. So I'm in high school. So with that,
You go to Franklin?
Yeah, I went to Franklin.
Okay.
So that was like the toughest time for me. Like, we're the outsiders. We're not from this side of town, this neighborhood. I'm labeled as being this type of girl from this neighborhood. Oh, she's from out here. Then they're labeling me from, oh, she's this side. And in reality, I'm not from either side.
Right.
I'm just Jasmine.
You're like, I'm just trying to go to school.
I'm just Jasmine. I'm not from this side of town. I'm not from this side of town. I'm just me. I'm Angela's daughter, So when we moved on the east side, it was like, now it's like, I got to be tough.
Yeah.
I got to fight. I'm not backing down.
Yeah.
Right.
So from there, I turned into. At first, I was a fighter, like a fighter. My mom used to be like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this girl. Like seriously,
School fighting.
You know when Jenny Jones was on back in the day, she like, I'm gonna send you to this boot camp. No, I don't want to go.
Right.
So
Right.
it was moving out east was like a challenge for me, like a big challenge, because it's like I have this heart, but it's like I gotta put this shield on, because I'm not backing down.
Yeah.
So those 4 years of my life was tough.
Wow.
Oh, and I mean tough. From like fighting to knowing myself, understanding myself, my household, then being a teen mother.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah, the food load.
Yeah, so then I've always felt like I had a point to prove.
Well, and I think that you gave a very valuable point right now about consistency and continuity, because we do, like my kids go to a charter school.
Yes.
And they have been there since the charter school was established. So for the last 10 years. So the great thing about that is that gives them continuity, and that gives them consistency, and that gives them a safeguard.
Exactly.
Right? Because they know what to expect. The teachers know me. Like that's building community.
It's literally an environment.
It's literally an environment. However, we have to be honest with ourselves about this is that environmental trauma I'm talking about, right? So we have people who, for whatever reasons, have to move from this community to that community, back to this community, and chances are it's probably more of an economic issue than anything.
It is.
Yes.
And so with that being said, guess what happens? The disparity in that consistency causes these behaviors, because like Jasmine was saying, trying to identify yourself and define who you are, but not being able to do so because where is that consistent circle?
Yeah.
And
where is that consistency?
It's hard when a person put a label on you and you trying to prove a point to this person. This is not me, but it's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
And it kind of gets a little personal, because when they question you, that kind of questions your character. And especially growing up in high school and going through, that adolescent stage, it's hard because you have a lot more just to deal with on top of that.
And I just love what Jasmine described today. And I tell families and kids and even myself this a lot, right? When you know who you are, you know who you are not.
Yes.
And so with that being said, as Jasmine described, when she's in the 8th, 9th grade and she doesn't even know who she is as a young lady and a woman and someone that's coming into high school, that's problematic. But how can you really clearly define who you are if you don't have that consistency with supports? And that is a piece of that environmental trauma,
especially when you're being moved around from sub-community to sub-community.
Yes, because it's like I can literally describe every neighborhood that I lived in. Like we stayed on the north side. It was cool, mellow. I actually stayed on the south side before. I had an older cousin that raised me. It was cool. It was mellow. It wasn't as intense as like literally until I moved on the east side of Stockton.
Wow.
And you think of the east side of Stockton, it's cool, it's chill. Like a lot of them out there grew up with each other and been knowing each other from childhood, so they're fine. But in a different aspect, I'm new, so it's some that I'm cool with. It's some that I'm really not. It's some portraying that they're cool, but now all of a sudden I'm like a really violent person.
Yeah,
violent, very, and I'm just like, this ain't me.
Well,
and
then we also have to factor in too, there's distress on both sides.
Yes.
Right. So let's look at it on Jasmine's side as somebody who's walking in high school who has not grown up there at all and has this reputation of being from this side or that side and this, that, or the other. Now, the other kids who are there, they have an hypervigilance as well, because they're trying to assess who you are. They don't know you.
Exactly.
So they're hypervigilant, and that aggression they've heightened, and so, you know, everybody's going in like locked fish. Right? Like, everybody's like, what's going on?
Seriously.
And so, but I guess my point to this conversation is, again, that educating our communities and bridging communities, like, because so many people feel so detached from one another, and so that's part of the trauma as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and you begin with having the conversation.
Exactly.
As a community organizer, you know, I try to face community issues and try to make things better for people. But the main issues that I run into, the first step is nobody wants to have that conversation with me.
Yeah.
And so once you don't have that, it's like, all right, how can I get different point of views or different experiences?
Well, that's why, you know, I always start off with defining the issue in full and theory, because a lot of times I think we miss the point of we don't talk about it because we don't understand it.
Yeah.
And we don't understand it, so we don't talk about it.
Exactly.
That's
And
true.
so if we're not having conversations that are like, if you're not uncomfortable in a conversation, you may not be having a conversation.
Exactly.
Right? That's why I said it gets real up here. I see Jasmine over here, you know, kind of like shifting
I'm
in
like,
the seat.
yeah,
Like,
because I said I wasn't nervous when you first and I'm like, okay, it's getting real up
it gets
here.
real up in here.
Drink some water.
Because listen, we have to have conversations to make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because if we're becoming uncomfortable and are feeling uncomfortable, that means we're having a real conversation about a real life issue, to talk about a real solution.
Exactly.
You know, I think that people feel like comfortable. Like, I've lived on the South Side all my life, right? I grew up on the South Side. And so I remember when I moved to Western Ranch, which I've been there for like the last 7 or 8 years, but I grew up on the South Side. And so when I moved to Western Ranch, I was like, it was like another world. Like, oh my God, like, this is
so
weird.
calm and just
it's
different.
so calm. And, you know, neighbors waving at you in the morning. My neighbor would wave at me. I'm like,
You're like, why are you talking to me?
you waving at me?
My motive is, I was here to live in don't come knocking at my door.
But and then when you're living on the South Side, like you kind of just stick to yourself and like lock the door and you know. And so, but case in point, so even as small as that was for me, that was a trauma. Like I felt uncomfortable with my neighbors waving at me. Why? Because that wasn't a norm.
Something that was
Exactly.
embedded
That
in
was already.
Yeah.
That was always embedded. Like, don't talk to strangers. Don't. You know.
Seriously.
I remember my neighbor came and she brought me like a tray of tamales, and I'm
Like,
like,
ain't
what?
no food for no stranger.
What?
That's the
Like,
first
what?
thing that comes.
You're like, where you get these
made
from?
that for me? And she was like, yeah, I made it for you. And I was like, oh, okay. I had to like take a step back.
Exactly.
And so, you know, growing up and relocating, and just especially when you've been, like Jasmine said, 3 different sides of town in your life, like
That's 3 different experiences.
We moved a lot growing up. Like when my father was alive, we had a lot of stability. No lie, it was a lot of stability. My mom was she was a teacher aide at a continuation. My dad, you know, he was known in the neighborhood for working on cars. He worked at a rest home as well. To me, in my eyes, as a child, I seen and I felt stability.
Yes.
It's family, it's community, it's stability, it's everything that a child should have.
Yeah, so it was like I had a working father, I had a working mother. Then my mom was in her religious beliefs as well. So we did our religious gatherings. It was to the point to where like we're kids, and my mom used to go door to door with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I went with her, and I used to love it, you know. And then as time went by and the separation came, I seen the change in the household. From the change in the household was the change in the neighborhood. So I'm just like, ooh.
So let me just to clarify before I bring up this point. So did your parents separate before your dad died or after?
Yeah, they separated before.
Okay.
Yeah, they separated before we were actually living on the south side of Stockton, on Madrid Drive. That was just like, I remember that house. That was my favorite house. Like, you know how the kids just have that, that dream house. Right. It was like this 2-story. We lived there, and I went to Montezuma Elementary.
Okay.
So,
you're definitely a Southside native.
I am not. But we lived there. We lived back in that neighborhood there. So they were together, and it was fun. And it was like the school talent shows. You had my dad helping us make up dances because he was from down south, you know, it was Mississippi. So he knew all the dances. We had the family meals every Sunday. We cooked.
Right.
And then when the separation came about, I knew what was going on in the household, but I was still a kid, so I didn't understand it fully. But I know when my mom said it was enough after 13 years, she was done.
Right.
Yeah.
And when she said she was done, the whole household felt it.
Yeah.
And that in itself, I mean, the change in the family system,
it just changes
and the
dynamics.
Consistency,
Yeah.
you know, in the family of having, you know, the meal time, the family time, and then you were witnessing together and community, you know, that in itself, the switch in that paradigm is traumatic.
Yeah.
And so, again, you know, I know we talked about this like sarcastically about when kids change, you know, in environments in school, but it's real. Like,
it is.
That when you're taking, I always tell families when they come and see me in private practice, when you take something away, you have to replace it with something else.
Yeah.
So if you're taking away, you know, the family meals and the continuity and the dancing together, like, that is very deeply traumatic.
Yeah.
And to not have anything to replace that with is difficult.
Yes.
And for some kids, when we talk about resiliency, in which we all have, the difference is that everybody isn't resilient in the same way.
Yeah.
And so when you're not resilient and you're not able to have healthy coping skills, you unfortunately have, I call them maladaptive coping skills, which is the negative element of coping, like being aggressive or defiance, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was your defense mechanism. Those are defense mechanisms in order for you to cope with what you're coping with.
And it's like that for a lot of kids.
And it's like that for a lot of
is.
kids.
I knew of like kids growing up saying, oh, their parents were divorced or they're no longer together. I didn't ever think that was ever possible in our household.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, our household wasn't perfect, but my mom and dad, they got history. Like, like it was normal for me for when they broke up. They got back together like 3-4 days later. So it was kind of like we were trained and it was a transaction. So like when like they were officially done, I'm like, whoa,
aren't you gonna get back together?
I'm like,
when you going back, Mom?
So like and then from this, after we lived on the south side in that home, we were there for a few years. We then moved on the west side of Stockton.
Oh.
Yeah, we moved on the west side of Stockton.
And Madrid and the west side is two different worlds.
So we moved to the west side of Stockton, and we actually stayed, when you get off the freeway on the Acacia exit, we stayed in that little court that you see right there off that. Yeah, we didn't stay way to the back. I don't even like that back there, but we stayed on the west side of Stockton. So when we stayed on the west side of Stockton, I then started going to Victory Elementary. Victory is actually a pretty good school.
And it's very small.
Yes.
Which is great.
I loved Victory Elementary. Actually, and where we lived was not, it wasn't even bad because we were in that little court.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like isolated from what was going on the west side of Stockton.
Right.
But then in the household, I seen the change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With my mom, you know. I can't say I started noticing the change because now I'm older to understand what's going on, and from there I became the mommy. I'm cooking, me and my brother. mom is not really in the home as much now.
Yeah.
Because she's free.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
now it's what we call a role reversal.
Yeah.
Where now, you're at an age where you should have still been playing with Barbies.
I'm in the 6th grade
You're
now.
in the 6th grade, so you went from dance rehearsals,
Talent shows,
Barbies.
because me and my brother
Right.
always used to
Yeah.
be in the talent shows
Right.
with what was his name? Tony Washington.
With Tony Washington.
I used to hate it though. I'm like, oh, why did she? I'm not a singer. So I'm like, we did these family activities. So now the separation is the West Side. I'm just like, okay, I can adjust to this.
And the role reversal. So you went from being a kid and having the basic roles of a kid, of a child, being creative and dancing and singing, whether you liked it or not, you were still doing it.
Yeah.
Now you're cleaning and taking care of your brother and being the parent. So not only did you have that change in the environment and where you grew up and where you loved, but now you're in a place that you may have not loved so much, just to kind of be politically correct. And also now your role is being a parent.
Yes.
And so, are we all seeing like these series of environmental traumas? So when, again, practitioners, teachers, communities, when we think about kids like acting out, this is why. Let's dig deep and let's really talk about
Exactly.
how that child is faring, because at the end of the day, you knew what was going on. You were intelligent enough to understand that. But did you understand how to cope with that? Did you know how to cope with that?
No, because in my household, my father was the one that we could sit and we could talk to. My mom, she was the tough one.
Right.
You show no emotion. You're tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
I'm tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not getting too close to me.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah.
my shield is up.
Yeah.
But as I'm getting older, I'm like, it's okay. Not everybody is the suspect. Not everybody is the bad guy.
Right.
Put it down.
Exactly.
But that's that hypervigilance. That's when I say people are hypervigilant, that is what that means.
Yeah.
That means that you have this protective shield, within your personality, your character, your spirit, your entirety, because, you've been hurt, you've been disappointed, there's things in your life that you didn't appreciate. So you're just more suspicious.
Yeah.
My ex-mother-in-law used to say everybody's a suspect. Everybody's guilty.
You don't put that past nobody.
Everybody's a suspect. But that's that hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And for me, so back when my parents divorced, my dad moved up north while mom and we moved in with my grandma in Conway, and we bounced from Conway to the Vista.
Okay.
So we're bouncing in between. So I kind of developed two personalities.
Yeah.
Right.
Where I was like Valentino that's in the
those
street.
and those who do
Those
not
is-
know,
Yeah.
please understand there is a difference between Conway and Sarah Vista.
Yes.
It really is
Yes,
different.
there is.
It really is.
There really is.
I lived with a family member on Bellevue, like literally across
Yeah.
the street in Sierra Vista, and it was just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Night and day.
It's live. You know what I
Night
mean?
and day.
So I kind of developed these two different personalities where I was Valentino in the streets, but then I was also the proper Valentino out north.
Right.
And so growing up in these two different households as a kid, I understood that. But sometimes I would bring a trait from Valentino to the streets to Northside and be judged for it. Or bring a trait from Valentino from Northside to Conway and be judged for that as well. So I kind of couldn't identify with either. You know what I mean? So I kind of kept it to myself.
Right. So
Yeah.
there was no middle in that.
No.
And
I
no
can be tough, and
autonomy.
then you being a boy as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tough.
Exactly.
And no autonomy for you. So for me, I kind of grew up in a very similar situation. Like, I grew up in Lincoln District.
Too. We always I always said I wanted to be in
Yeah.
the Lincoln District because I could be
Yeah.
calm.
Yeah.
And just,
Yeah. So we were bougie.
Yeah.
We were bougie. And so, but we went from being bougie to the South Side.
Yeah.
And that was like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like very traumatic for me.
No,
I was
yeah.
just How did that work for you?
I didn't know anything about other cultures.
Yeah.
And then, people will laugh. People do laugh. And I'm not afraid to say this. But I never knew I was African American until I was like in the 5th grade.
Kimberly.
Because I grew up in Lincoln.
Yeah.
There was no people of color.
And you see that creates
and now
some
that I
divide.
right.
Yeah.
And looking back now, I realized that me and my sister were the only black girls in the school. And I never knew that. And so when I moved to South Stockton, I was like, what in the world? Like, not only am I black, but they're different colors and shades of black. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
But I got bullied and teased a lot about, like, you know, when we came through for school, we had on like our little ruffle socks on, our little, you know, cashmere sweaters.
Yeah.
And people are like, where are y'all from? And I'm like, oh God, like, this is Mom, can you buy me some jeans?
And I went through that all the time because, I mean, I would go out north and talk some slang, and then they're like, why are you talking like that?
Yeah.
And then I'll go out south, and then I would, you know, be a little proper, and they're like, why are you acting like that?
Right.
You know?
So that cultural, that subcultural shock of having to readjust how you couldn't be Valentino, the authentic, you know, person. You have to readjust. And like, even when you went to Franklin, like you were saying how it was like a subculture shock.
Franklin was like, so, oh my God.
We're not just sorry, Franklin.
No,
High School graduate.
I graduated 2003 from
you.
Franklin High School. But, you know, if a person said they can turn back the hands of time and do it over, I think I would do a do-over. I would, like, literally, because living on the east side and attending Franklin High School was, I mean, it was so hard to where I used to, like, question myself. If I'm still here, would they even miss me? And that's bad when you get to start thinking that, you know. But it's like, I can't open up and vent because I'm like, then I'm gonna be weak.
Yes.
So I'm like,
that was exactly.
That's that coping mechanism that you had to adjust to because of all your life, you know, situations and obstacles. Like, you have to reframe yourself. But that's deep, Jasmine, because, you know, I kind of feel like we're sitting here today and we're, you know, resilient and we've overcome some things. But what about the kids who don't have those outlets?
And that's what bothers me the most.
Right?
Because, I mean, my dad was financially stable, but yet mom was in Conway. So I'm going from seeing kids getting to whatever they want, whatever their dreams, to I have a next door neighbor that can't even buy socks for their kids. And I'm like, that's an issue.
That's
you know
an
what
issue.
I mean?
And it's traumatic for the parent not being able to afford socks for their kids. And it's traumatic for the kids who don't have the socks. And so where's the balance in this? You know, where's the equity in income, the equity in safeguards, the equity in consistency, and that self-belonging. And those are conversations that I have every day with people. Like, how do we cope? And not only just cope, because you only can cope so much when you don't have food. Like, coping and taking deep breaths and thinking positive and having an empty stomach is two different things.
True. Because when we stayed on the east side of Stockton, my mom then started change. Like, she wasn't ever perfect, but it was like a change in her too when we lived in that neighborhood. It was things that I used to hear as a child that I didn't agree with it or I didn't understand. And then it was times where we were hungry, and my mom was like, she not asking no family member for nothing. You know, we'll salve it out. Or it's been a few times people in the neighborhood, they'll like bring us food or whatever. And I just be like, dang, and in my head, I'm like, you go to work every day and you go to school. How you don't have no money? You know? Me not thinking, okay, it's a single parent. My mom now has 6 kids.
Right.
You know, and she's on a set income. 6
grown kids.
Right. It's 6 of us. The youngest is 19, 20 now.
Wow.
But it's like, in my head, I'm like, how you don't have the money and your rent is only this amount, but I'm not thinking of all the other stuff that come with it.
PG&E,
car
water,
note, insurance, life
childcare,
policies, you know, bus fare for me and my brother to get back to school. I didn't think about any of that, you know, lunch money. So I just was like, I don't get it. And now that I'm an adult, and I'm like,
oh, you got that
yeah.
message.
Yeah.
You got
you know, I used
that
to
on
always say, I
now.
can't
Yeah.
wait till I get grown.
Yeah.
And now I'm grown, I'd be like, maybe my childhood wasn't that bad. You know, because it was
I'm still growing up. I'm only 19, and you know these bills are starting to come in a little bit
they
more.
come.
They come.
And it, you know, going to college, it's hard. It really is hard, and that just adds a little bit more extra pressure, and it's crazy.
So taking a step back, thinking about, you know, the effects of the economy now. The economy is not as stable as it should be, or it has
it's worse
been.
now.
You know, the rise of PG&E, you know, the rise of water, the rise of just rent
Yeah.
in Stockton alone.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
thinking about all of these issues that the community and its members face, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a lot more deeper concerned.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we talk about how we felt in those traumatic experiences. Think about how the parents feel.
Exactly.
Like, as a
Exactly.
parent, I'm a parent. I know Jasmine is a parent. Being a parent and having your child ask for something that you know that you can't provide is not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. And yeah, you know, my kids too, like they have like these expectations of like, you know, we want you to buy this, or we want to go here, we want to go there. You know, when Southwest launched the $49
Hawaii. You
Hawaii.
should have seen me.
Right.
I'm like, Jasmine, stop.
Right.
Because they don't need to go nowhere right now. Like, it's cool.
Right,
They just went on
right.
vacation, you know?
So my kids are all like, "Oh, look, Mom, oh, we can go this and this and that." And I'm like, "Okay," I'm thinking in the back of my mind, that sounds great, but guess
Yeah.
what? The PG&E bill is $700
When I
this
got my
month.
PG&E bill, I didn't understand it. And I was like, maybe it's because they filed bankrupt when I, you know, and I was like, I didn't understand that bill. I did
Listen.
not understand that bill at all.
Listen,
And thinking for solutions for that kind of ties into what I'm a supporter of what our current mayor is doing with the basic income for $500 a month for a selected
yes.
family.
Yes.
Because I've seen the effects that just $500 can have on somebody.
right?
And so, you know, when I think about when somebody asks, well, what can you do? Well, think about your current position.
Right.
You know, if you're serving on a nonprofit board or you're with an organization, you're a business owner, what can you do for just to help take off that little load?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's not to say that I go, you know, I tell my kids like, well, the PG&E bill is this much and the water bill is this much. And as a business owner, Jasmine, holla if you hear me, as a business owner.
Yeah, it's challenging.
I
Yeah.
pay almost $800 a month in just insurances, malpractice, insurance for my business establishment, health insurance business,
Yeah.
Exactly.
car insurance
Yep.
business, like
Yeah.
you know, car
It's-
insurance.
Them
It's-
dollars really add up. And when I opened up my business, I just jumped into it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of all the things that I needed to do. I just knew I need to go to the city hall, make sure this paper is right.
Yeah.
So if state board of regulation come in, I won't be in trouble. Or even if somebody call in because they think I'm not legit,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get in trouble. But I didn't think about when you're actually working one-on-one with a client, doing a desired style that they request, you got to have not only business insurance, but you have to have professional insurance.
Absolutely.
Professional insurance is where they're going to cover you if
Yeah.
you do mess up on that client here and they decide to take you to court.
Liability.
It adds up.
You know,
It adds
and then you have to also make sure in your insurance, like for instance, my salon was down for 9 days.
Wow. Yeah.
That was lack of an income for me. And I'm just like, so
Right.
you got to make sure in that insurance you have coverage for that.
Yeah.
You know, and then every month in a business, it's always not a new ideal that you're wanting. And, you know, and it's to me, a business is just two homes that you have to balance.
Yeah.
Two homes. And then for me, growing up the way I grew up, and I know everybody is not rich or financially stable, so I try to make my prices affordable.
Exactly.
And when other businesses come and tell me that I'm charging too little or I'm not charging enough and you don't see no profit, and I tell them like straight up, don't tell me how to price my
Exactly.
business. I
Exactly.
know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it.
Exactly.
Not everybody can afford a $200-300 install.
And you know what, Jasmine, I have to give you kudos for that, because let me tell you, as a therapist, our self-image everybody, not just women, our self-image is important. And if we don't feel good and confident about ourselves, which is looking good, you know, that is it's depression. That's depressing.
You know, when us women get our hair done, our man, even us, we turn into a whole nother person.
I know it.
Literally, when you walk into my salon, I have this sticker on my wall that a good friend of mine makes. Her name is TK, and my sticker says, "Bring out your inner Beyonce." And I put that on that wall for a purpose. Like, when you walk into my place of business, I want you to feel good. Yeah. Not only look wise, but financially wise. I'm not trying to dig a hole in your pocket, because this is something I like to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. And she's very good at it. I see her at least every 3 months. My salon is my outlet from like the way I grew up and how I want things to be in life. When I'm in my salon, I'm in a zone. I feel good. I'm happy. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, not every client that comes in here pays. No. I don't broadcast it because it's nobody's business. It's between me and that person. Not every client that comes in and I'm not, clients, please don't get upset when I say this. They don't get the same treatment as this other client. I make sure everybody is satisfied when they leave. Right. But each client that I have a personal level with them, a personal relationship. So I have one client. I might just have to say your name. I'm sorry, Miss Janice, but I love her. She's seen the struggle from when she's been with me since Amira was in the 3rd grade. That's how long she's been my client. Wow. And she's on a set income due to, because she was an Army brat, due to a car crash. And since I've been knowing her, since Amira was in the 3rd grade, she has had so many different surgeries. And she will scrounge up any dollar she got to come get her hair done. And she'd be like, "Oh, babe, I got $50. What can I get for $50? And she know my schedule directly. Sometimes it takes me like 6-7 days to respond to her. And when I finally do respond to her, I'd be like, "Oh, it's $50." She get in, I'd be like, "I don't need your money, just go. Just get your hair done, just go." Yeah. Because I love her. I appreciate her. You've been riding it out with me. You didn't sit on my you didn't have surgeries. You didn't sit on the floor, to the bar stools, to the kitchen chairs, to coming to your house, to now coming to my place of business. And you respect my rules at my place of business. So I value that kind of stuff. I do. I value so continuity and loyalty and just a regard, you know. I think that the moral of the story is to have kind regards for others, because we don't know what he or she may be facing.
Exactly.
Seriously.
So,
exactly.
All right, guys. This is a good show. We was riding. We was getting it down. Last thoughts, starting with Valentino, ending with Jasmine. Any last thoughts?
I mean, trauma is a hard thing, but at the end of it, you just have to remember that it's upon yourself to really, really push. Of course, you're going to have outside resources to help you. Of course, you're going to have people that love and support you there, but it's really going to take within yourself, because it has to be authentic to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
My thing on trauma, I can't say you have to learn how to adjust, because it's really challenging. But if you do know someone that their situation is not how they want it to be, always reach out to them. Just talk to them. You know, give them some encouraging words. You know, sometimes, you know, I wish I had that. I mean, I had it, but at certain times I wish, like, oh, somebody was there I could turn to and talk to it. And honestly, you know, people, they want to give financially. That's always not a blessing. You know, being just an open ear, or just even sitting on the phone, or just sitting with them, just letting them vent, that can be so helpful. So helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess my last thoughts are just two things. One, like Jasmine said, you never know what people are going through. So having that open ear and being open for people to be, you know, not afraid to explain how they're feeling, and to never judge a book by its cover, because you just never know. Exactly. Lastly, on every Friday at my trauma recovery center at 31 North San Joaquin Street, I will be hosting a coffee with Kimberly. This is open to the community for 2 hours every day, one day a week. That was my gift back to the community. and you can come and talk about whatever it is you want. You bring the conversation. I provide the coffee.
And she gonna dig.
She gonna bring it out.
Yeah, it gets real. It gets real. It gets real. So, anyway, thank you for all the viewers. It looks like the show is doing really, really well. A lot of people are tuning in. So with that, I'm feeling like people are having issues and they're trying to get to a solution.
Yes.
So with that being said, don't forget to join us in 2 weeks for another conversation with Live with Kimberly on the Voice of San Joaquin. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. Because we can't tag you if you don't like our page. So don't forget to like our page. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. See you guys in another 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.